everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Serious Sunday. Make sure you guys leave suggestions down below for cases or topics that you guys want me to talk about. All of my information will be down in the description box. In today's Serious Sunday episode 2, we will be talking about Tina Stewart and Shanterrica Madden. This case takes place at Middle State University of Tennessee in 2011. I'll give you a little background of the two. Let's start off with Tina. Tina was 18 years old at the time. She received a full scholarship to TSU for basketball. She was a star basketball player in high school, and then she got a full scholarship to TSU to play on the basketball team. So she was really popular, very well known, very outgoing, and just kind of like the life of the party type of girl. Everyone knew her. She was even so good at basketball that she was the captain of the basketball team in her freshman year of college. So on the opposite, we have Shanterrica Madden, who is also 18 years old at the time. She's going to MSU. She's a really shy kid, introverted, kind of kept to herself. She was very sheltered, so that kind of explains it a little bit, just to give some background on her. She wasn't too known or popular. She just wasn't in the same type of crowd as Tina was. Aspiring to be a lawyer, so obviously she has a good head on her shoulders. She is the first person to go to college in her family, so she had a lot riding on the back of her. She really, really wanted to make her family proud. So fast forward to move-in day at the college. So they actually both happened to be roomed together by the apartment complex because they cater to college students, so they kind of choose who your roommates are for you. It's just not necessarily on campus or like right on the school grounds, but it is associated with the school, of course. That apartment complex is called Raiders Crossing. They ended up being in a 2-bedroom. I guess the building reviewed their profiles and basically said that they have so much in common. They kind of roomed them together. Once they moved in together, they kind of realized that they don't really have much in common, but they kind of kept it cordial. It was a hi bye type of thing. They did establish rules in the house, like clean the dishes, laundry, who cleans what, things like that. But pretty much, being that they didn't have the same circle and group of friends, they kind of stayed a little separate and stayed in their rooms most of the time. But they did have set boundaries when it came to like cleaning the kitchen, bathrooms, things like that. Let's fast forward to when problems started to happen a little bit. So shortly after they moved in, they started having these little minor issues that obviously eventually blew up to be major issues. Let's start off with Shanterrica. Shanterrica was a smoker. She smoked a lot of MJ, Mary Jane, and she basically, that kind of how she coped. She was a little homesick. Like I said, she was introverted. She kind of kept to herself. She did meet a couple people on campus that were also like her, and they also smoked Mary Jane, so they kind of just stayed together. And she didn't really, meet new people and things like that, so she kind of used that to kind of cope. That was like her everyday thing. She was not giving that up for anything. And Tina had a problem with this because she is a star basketball player on a full scholarship. And as you know, athletes in general, if they find that in your system, you're either going to be suspended or on temporary leave, or, there's consequences involved. So Tina kind of told her, like, hey, can you please not smoke in the apartment? Because for one, it's not allowed anyways. And for two, I don't want to accidentally inhale it and it's in my system somehow. And then that means that I have to, be kicked off the team or whatever the case may be, lose her scholarship. There's so much that's riding on that. And Shanterrica was like, okay, she kind of understood, but didn't really care. She kind of limited it to only smoking in her room with the window open. And then when Tina wasn't there, she'll smoke throughout the apartment. Before, she was smoking anywhere and everywhere in the apartment with her friends. So once Tina said that, she kind of limited a little bit to her room, kept the door open, things like that. However, that was just for a short time being. Eventually, she started getting more comfortable of, leaving her door open when she smokes, or smoking in the bathroom or in the living room, things like that. Especially if she knew for sure Tina was not there, she would do it. And then when Tina walked in, she would be like, hey, we kind of had this discussion already. Why are you still smoking? Where I can possibly inhale it. Like, this is our shared space. You can't do that. Well, let's move on to Shanterrica problem with Tina. Shanterica didn't really like that Tina invited her boyfriend over a lot. Tina did have a boyfriend. His name was Casey. He was also on the basketball team. And they kind of had like this love and basketball relationship. They was always together. They went to practice together. They did everything together. So he was always over at the apartment, which I get it. That's your boyfriend. This is also your apartment. But he kind of made Shanterica feel a little uncomfortable. He was always around. She felt like she couldn't walk around in her pajamas or comfortable clothing when he was around. And I kind of can be on her side with that, because I understand that, like, you want to be comfortable in your house. You're paying all this money to be here, and you want to be able to move throughout your house freely without feeling uncomfortable. There was an incident where Shanterica was actually in the shower. She was just getting out the shower, actually. So curtain was open and everything. Shower curtain was open, and he accidentally walked in because he assumed nobody was in there. Which, I mean, if it's not your house, you should be knocking on every door before you enter it anyways. But that's what happened, and it made her feel really uncomfortable, to the point where Shanterica actually went to the security of the apartment, and kind of told them like, hey, this is getting ridiculous. I've told my roommate Tina time and time again to not have him around, or at least let me know when he'll be around so I won't be there, and limit him in the apartment at all times, just because it's making her feel uncomfortable. So the apartment complex did set up like a mediation for the two of them, but unfortunately Tina could not attend because she had an away game, and the mediation never really took place. So it's just more and more of a build-up without the communication between them. They'll throw like side remarks or snotty things at each other, but it wasn't really being communicated. So they just had so much anger built up inside of them on each side, to the point where everything was irritating them. So after the failed mediation, things just got worse from there. They wouldn't even speak to each other. They'll walk past each other as if they don't even know each other. There would be like little side comments like, oh, you didn't clean your dishes type of thing. And that's also a thing that Shanterica was a little frustrated about, is that Casey would come in, spend the night, use the bathroom. They never filled up, like never. And being that he was there so much, she kind of expected him to like kind of pitch in with certain things. Like, if you're going to be here as much, you might as well buy some toilet paper, some dish detergent, something. He would use the dishes and just leave it in the sink. And Shanterica would be like, well, Tina, you're mad at me if I leave something in the sink, but your boyfriend is doing the same thing and he's not being held accountable. So they would kind of just be picky like that. So in my opinion, I can kind of get from the both of them that kind of like their personalities is starting to really like grow, and the anger is really starting to grow. Tina, she's definitely more of the aggressive girl. She's more outgoing. She's more confident. She's more like, hey, this is what you need to do. And she's more aggressive with it. When Shanterica approaches, like, hey, can you please do this? Can you please do that? And then it was just ignored. So as Tina is like aggressively talking to Shanterica's not kindly, but just kind of ignore her and just not follow up or whatever she's asking for instance, doing the dishes, vacuuming, sweeping, cleaning, certain things like that. So they were just being petty with each other. So let's fast forward to the day that they were actually moving out of the house, because they did decide to end their lease. I'm not sure if the lease was up or if they broke their lease. I believe it was spring break, so I think they were breaking their lease. They both agreed to break their lease. And Shanterica was actually in her room smoking a Mary Jane. She actually thought Tina left for the day and won't be back in. So she kind of was in her room. She invited her friend Renee over. She's really important, so listen to this. She invited her friend Renee over, and they was in the room smoking Mary Jane. She was doing her laundry because, she's packing up, so she's like cleaning her last bit of laundry, things like that. She had music playing. She was having a good time. She had her doors open because, she's moving back and forth from doing laundry to her room, whatever. So they're laughing, having a good time. What they don't know, even though they assume that Tina was gone, and I'm not sure if maybe they saw her leave and didn't see her come back, but actually at this time, Tina was in her room the entire time on the phone with her friend. And, she didn't have a TV on or anything, so it was quiet. Shanterica was playing her own music, so it's not like she would have heard her on the phone. And their rooms weren't that close to the point where they would have heard each other, like phone calls and things like that. But Shanterica and her friend Renee is in the room talking crap about Tina the entire time, calling her names, just basically just, gossiping with your friend. You know how you just talk mess about people with your friend. So she was kind of doing that, and Tina heard everything. Tina got to the point where she's like, you know what? I'm just gonna call security because this is getting ridiculous. Like, I'm not even gonna step outside. I'm just gonna call security because I smell it starting to, it's coming to my room, and I'm tired of it. I gave her so many warnings. And keep in mind, Tina did threaten Shanterrica with calling the authority or the security guard of the apartment many, many times. So she just kind of, this was like her final straw. She was like, you know what? I'm calling them. So they came up, they knocked on the door, and Shanterrica was obviously scared because at this time Mary Jane was not legal. So, he let her off with a warning, made her flush it down the toilet, and just say, hey, like, listen, I know you're a law student. You're aspiring to be a lawyer. This is going to mess up your career. Like, do not get into this. Like, do not continue to smoke Mary Jane. It's just not good for you. Anyways, he left her off with a warning and left. Tina, for whatever reason, decided to tweet about calling the security guard on Shanterrica, which obviously Shanterrica eventually saw because it's on social media. So it kind of threw her over the balcony. She was really, really angry. She's like, I can't believe this girl will call the authority on me. But in a way, Tina's like, well, you did call the authority on me when, about my boyfriend. So they were kind of doing tit for tat type of things. So after she finds out that, and mind you, the friend Renee is still in the room. So after she finds out that Tina is the one that snitched on her and she actually is in the house, Shanterrica actually went to her room and confronted her, which this is so out of character for Shanterrica. She's never been in a fight before. She's been really low key. She's not this type of girl, but she was just so upset at the fact that this happened. One, she just lost her Mary Jane, and two, she could have gotten a lot of trouble for that. And good thing he did just let her off in a warning because she could have got probably expelled. However, like I said, she did go to Tina's room and confronted her, banging on her door. Tina's on the phone with her friend and like, hold on, girl, like, someone's knocking on my door. She put the phone down and opened the door, where then Shanterrica and Tina began to go back and forth, just yelling at each other, making threats, saying fighting words like, I can't believe you did this, how dare you, calling each other names, of course the worst names I'm not going to say on here. But however, they began going back and forth. Renee can hear this in Shanterrica's room, and Renee calls her friend and like, hey, please come get me. These girls are fighting. I can tell it's gonna end bad. Like, I need to get out of here. Like, I have nothing to do with this. I just want to go. So she hangs up. She's waiting for her friend to come. And so then she hears Shanterrica say, my head, my head. And she's like, she still does not get out the room. She just sits there. And then she hears Tina say, get off of me, get off of me, get off of me. Don't push me. Things like that. Like, basically, commotion is happening. It just has not got there. They're like pushing each other, bumping each other. And then Renee recalls hearing someone say she has a knife. And from that point forward, it just became silent. Like, it was like a couple more seconds of commotion. And then it was a big thud, and then it was silence. And Renee was just kind of stuck. She doesn't leave Shanterrica's room. She didn't know what happened. She didn't want to see anything. She just kind of was frozen in fear of what happened. So eventually, Shanterrica actually walks towards her room where Renee is and just says, hey, Tina just left. I don't want to be here when she gets back. I don't know what she's gonna do to me. But she just told Renee, like, yeah, she just like cut me, but I don't want to be here when she gets back. We gotta go. So they start getting their stuff together, starting to walk towards the front. So Shanterrica actually walks back to her room when Renee is waiting, like, oh my god, what happened? And then Shanterrica is like, oh, it's nothing. She just left. She just cut me a little bit, but I'm getting out of here because I do not want to be here when she comes back. I don't know what's going to happen. I just know we need to get out of here before she comes back because I'm not going to fight her again. Just kind of telling Renee what happened. But she doesn't tell her everything. So Shanterrica actually like grabs a blanket and wraps the knife in a blanket. Apparently Renee did not see this knife. However, because Renee is like, getting her own stuff together, she was already ready to go anyway. She already called her friend. So Renee tells Shanterrica like, yeah, I just called my friend, like, I'm getting ready to leave anyways. So Shanterrica is like, okay, cool. The knife up in her blanket and tries to stuff the blanket that has a knife in it in a plastic bag or in a paper bag, but the knife actually falls out, and Renee sees the knife in the kitchen as they were, trying to get their stuff together, whatever. And that kind of in the back of Renee's head was like, oh my god, like, something's not right here. And that kind of set off like a red alarm in Renee's head, in which she was a little bit more nervous and kind of wanted to get more away from Shanterrica than anything at that point. So they grab their stuff, they're walking towards the door to head out, like the hallway to head out, and Renee actually sees Tina's legs in the doorway of Tina's room, and she's laying on the floor. She literally freaks out and just leaves. In her mind, she said that she kind of just thought she was maybe passed out. But in the back of her mind, she kind of felt something a little different. So she really just wanted to get away from Shanterrica. She didn't want nothing to do with this. She was trying to go. Me personally, if you just told me a girl just walked out the house and she left and we're trying to get out of here before she comes back, but then we walk past her room and her legs are in the doorway, I can't just walk out of that situation. I will open that door and make sure she's alive, like see what happened. Is she passed out? I think in her mind she just automatically assumed she was passed out and didn't want to know any more information to just not be involved in the situation. But obviously that kind of sucks because you could have saved someone's life. But let's keep going. So Renee walked out the house. Shanterrica is still in the house. I think she went back into Tina's room, but at this point Renee already left. She actually is the one that made the 911 call anonymously and just said, hey, there's 2 roommates that's fighting in this room, here's their names. And yeah, kind of set the record straight. So police are already on their way. They didn't tell her about the knife or anything like that, just because she wanted to kind of stay unaware of everything during this time, because she didn't know exactly what happened. So after she made that call, she's standing outside waiting for her friend still, and Shanterrica runs out of the apartment complex without the bag, so she must have got rid of it at some point. And she actually had a blue cell phone and stuffed it in her bra, which later turned out to be Tina's phone. People were like her friend, Tina's friend that she was on the phone with, was texting her, blowing her up, and Shanterrica acted as Tina and responded saying, I'm about to get in the shower, I'll talk to you later. Also, her boyfriend Casey was actually on his way to come pick her up because they had a dinner date that night, and she just texted Casey acting as Tina and said, hey, I'm about to get in the shower. Same thing. Casey was like, okay, like, time, he just didn't feel right about it. It just didn't make sense to him. So he decided to actually make his way over to the apartment complex, and he just thought, well, I'll just see it and I'll be there by the time she gets out, things like that. By the time she gets out the shower, so we can get ready, go ahead and leave for the night. He's on his way over to the apartment complex. Meanwhile, Shanterrica and Renee is still standing outside. Renee friends pull up with their car, and Renee gets in, and they're like, listen, Shanterrica, unfortunately we don't have enough space for you, like basically, you can't, we're not giving you a ride. At that point, Shanterrica went back into the apartment complex, and as she was in the hallway of their apartment complex, Casey actually walked in and went towards, their apartment. He realized that the door was unlocked, which he thought was a little weird, but he's like, okay, I just saw Shanterrica, so obviously maybe she just had to run out the apartment real quick or whatever. So he didn't think nothing of it until when he walked in there and walked into Tina's room and saw her laying on the floor, blood gushing everywhere. It was just a terrible, terrible scene. He immediately called 911, hysterically crying. He was so distraught, so hurt. She was still breathing at the time, so he begged for ambulance to get there because, she's still alive. I need to save her. He was really, really stressed out and basically urged them to hurry up and get there. By the time the authorities got there, they actually saw Casey running in the parking lot, and he was actually chasing Shanterrica. Shanterrica was booking it. Like, she was dipping and dodging him all throughout the parking lot. And then the police kind of finally caught on because he said on the phone, like, Shanterrica did this, her roommate did this, like, I know this. He just, she stabbed her. Already saying that. So the time they got there, they was already on it and, trying to get Shanterrica as well. So they did end up catching her, of course. Meanwhile, Tina was transported to the hospital where she later was pronounced dead, unfortunately, at 18 years old. It is just mind-blowing. It's so sad to see. And obviously that just turns an assault assault/attempted murder to a cold-blooded murder. So when they took Shanterrica in, she claimed not guilty in self-defense. The reason why she claimed self-defense is because she claims that Tina is the one who actually pushed her first, and she kind of retaliated after that initial push. Now, like I stated, Renee was not, like, she could not physically see the fight, so she couldn't attest to that. So we're only going by what Shanterrica is saying at this point. And also, Shanterrica said that the knife was already in Tina's room, so she just grabbed that knife once she was pushed, and they were going back and forth. When she realized she was actually getting beat up, she grabbed the knife and retaliated and stabbed Tina. So she claims that it was out of self-defense. So let's fast forward to the actual trial. Trial was in May of 2012. Unfortunately, they were able to find tweets that did claim that Tina was bullying Shanterrica because she was more vocal about not liking Shanterrica, and Shanterrica wasn't as vocal. So it kind of played into Shanterrica's favor for that only reason. But fortunately enough, after Renee's testimony as well as Casey's, and then obviously, you know, trial process, prosecutor, defense attorney, the jury did find Shanterrica guilty of the murder of Tina Stewart. She was sentenced to 25 years to prison for murder, and then 4 years for tampering with evidence. As I mentioned, you know, she did get rid of that bag that she had the knife in, so that's tampering with evidence. So she still is in jail right now on a 29-year sentence. If it was self-defense, she would not have been acting as Tina, speaking to her, Tina's friend, and speaking to Casey. She would not have, you know, lied to her friend about it and got rid of evidence and things like that. Shanterrica does just say it's because she was just, you know, freaking out. She'd never been in trouble before. She didn't know what to do. So she was kind of, you know, she was just like in a mental state where she didn't really think rationally. However, unfortunately, she has to pay for her consequences. This story is really sad to me because it's two black girls that went to college, that went to university, trying to better their life. One has a full ride scholarship on basketball, and the other one is going to college to be a lawyer. So it's really, really sad that this had to end this way, because honestly, we love seeing black excellence, and the fact that it ended this way with such horror, and it's just a really, really sad situation, and my heart goes out to both families because technically they both lost both of their daughters. Shanterrica's in jail for 29 years and Tina's never coming back, unfortunately. I really want to do this video because, you know, college is starting up soon. You gotta really be careful who you room with. Don't let the small things get to you. You know, set those boundaries ahead of time and make sure you guys are just being safe out there, protecting yourself. And if you need someone to talk to, there's therapists out there, there's counselors, you have friends. Like, do whatever you got to do to release that stress. And please, please, please do not find yourself in a situation like this where it has to get physical with your roommate, because you just never know how it's going to turn out, which is very unfortunate. So that's all for today's video. I hope you guys enjoy this story. This is not a story that's like mainstream. I actually saw an episode of this show. I forget what show it's called. I'll link it down below. And I was like, oh my god, I need to cover this on my Serious Sunday, just because this story does not get a lot of light, and it's really unfortunate. But I wanted to make sure I share it with you guys so you guys are aware. Make sure you guys follow me on all my social medias, shop my Etsy, and leave some suggestions down below. I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye, you guys.